Welcome to the Sounds Like This podcast. I'm your host, Julie Murray. I'm a music educator specialising in early years and a mother, gardener and lover of adorable dogs. Today I am joined by excellent human, Jo Harris. Jo Harris is here to talk to me today about play, the power of play in early years and education. And Jo is a play advocate turned early years consultant, and has been a kindergarten teacher and used her brilliant skills in other ways with play with children for quite some time now. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm very pleased to have you. So today I thought we could have a bit of a chat about what play actually is and what your experiences with play have been and the benefits of play for kids.
So when you mentioned the lifespan of my career, it's over 25 years, but woo! I know I just look too young for that.
Love it.
So my career started as a kindergarten teacher. I'm actually still a registered teacher. It's something I refuse to let go of, even though I'm not actively teaching children. I'm perhaps more in the consultant advocacy space now. So kindergarten teaching has been a part of most of my career, but I did specialise in play therapy, and that's been it was a very special turn for me, with turning of the career for me. So, and something that the skills I still use today. So.
Beautiful. Can you tell me a little bit about how you got into play therapy?
So I had a really unique and wonderful situation. I count that as one of life's great blessings. I had the teaching experience pretty much under my belt. It didn't mean that there weren't things to learn, but I came across a particular child, and the relationship was very different from what I was used to. My bag of tricks was just not working. But there's an opportunity to grow for the child and for me. So I actually consulted another kindergarten teacher for some advice because I was feeling quite stuck, and she actually came to observe me and just watched what I was doing. She's like, I don't know why you're being so hard on yourself. What you're doing is actually it's actually known as a therapeutic play technique. So I said, tell me more.
Yeah. So what is play therapy then?
Play therapy is about allowing children to develop it's a form of counselling, but there's not necessarily a spoken element to the experience. But what it is about is using techniques in which the children are encouraged to take the lead in the play, and there's an opportunity to solve problems through play. So problems as in what's happening socially and emotionally, which may not be able to be put into words, but with certain symbols and symbolic play, there's an opportunity to work through and represent issues in a tangible way. So there's an opportunity for children to learn to regulate without realising they're regulating. And this completely turned my teaching on its head, because I probably would have, and you can tell I'm a chatterbox right now.
I love it.
And I agreed to a podcast to talk.
Thank you.
But it's about the turn and the change in the teaching was listening.
Yes.
And observing in a very different way, because what we want to do is children to create their own strategies and solutions. But it's often not with more words, it's with space being held for you to find out your own answers.
I think that's really important because, as humans, it takes us time to develop and learn to articulate what we're feeling, to actually process what we're feeling, and then be able to label it in a way that you can communicate and have someone else understand it. And by taking the pressure off the language and enabling children to use something that they can use now, whatever age they happen to be, I think is a really powerful thing, because it means that the children can communicate what they need to communicate regardless of their hold on the language.
Yes, sometimes there's a challenge in being told how you feel. And if you don't know how to recognise that yourself, it makes you dependent on adults.
Yeah.
That's what we don't want.
No.
When we're helping to support little ones, it's about them learning for themselves. So it's actually a collaborative effort, and it's not I know better than you because I've lived longer than you. I actually, not surprisingly, learned more from the children than I could teach them. Honestly, that's how I feel about it. And it's a beautiful model for, we just mentioned it, with emotions. They're such beautiful gifts, but often we fly straight past them because there's not the time to look into what's being said. But it's like a little radar system. It's like the light that comes up on your dashboard to tell you your car's not happy. So it's looking for our own internal barometer and saying, hey, wait, because life doesn't stop.
Yeah.
But moments happen, emotions and feelings get stored, and they can create challenging behaviours.
Yeah.
They can not just challenging as in I didn't want to make that sound limited, but challenging in different ways, sadness, anxiety, sometimes anger, which can be frightening, but it's actually a gift.
Yeah, well, it's something that you can use to address whatever was at the core of that. It's really interesting chatting and touching on dysregulation, because quite often with dysregulation, it won't be one little thing that'll set it off, and it won't be like one instance or one whatever, but it's accumulative. And, if you get to the point where the behaviour has accelerated and burst, whatever that looks like for that child, whether it's frustration, anger, sadness, even physically the way that they might be moving, they might look like they've got the sillies or something, but that could be dysregulation. That could be just their whole nervous system overwhelmed. And so helping them feel their feelings and label their feelings and process them and be able to use play to express themselves, I think it's really cool. That's a really cool thing to do.
It is. Play is such a beautiful and underestimated topic. And I think any opportunity to really look and investigate and explore what's happening, it's actually quite magical. So in a therapeutic space, it is all about observing and not jumping in, but actually allowing the child to find their own way. I did have a situation, I have permission to say because it's a long time ago now, but one of my very, very first clients, I actually had him in a kindergarten program, but in a therapeutic play space. It really allowed him to say, are you accepting? He said that in a sort of 5-year-old way.
Yeah.
You've just accepted my behaviour. How are you just letting me get away with things? And it's like, I'm not. And it was like having a conversation with an adult almost, but this bravery to, there's no limits on uncapping those emotions.
Yeah.
And what it allowed him to do was to see himself and just go, oh, I don't know that I like that thing about me. I want to change it. So it comes from an internal motivation.
So interesting that he was aware enough that whatever it was that he was doing would have been pulled up by an adult previously, and he either would have been shamed for it or punished for it, or there would have been some sort of ramification for that behaviour, whatever that looked like, and that he was aware enough to know that what had just happened was different, and your response to it was very different. That's really interesting.
Oh, it was game changer. I know that word's used a lot, but it truly was. When someone allows you in like that, it's very, very special, and you're witnessing a moment in time when he's connecting with who he really is. And I heard through many years later, he's enjoying life. He's very creative. He sort of found out who he was quite young.
Beautiful.
And it's, there's that soul searching, but it's finding his place and feeling the confidence to be himself. And that's ultimately, that's what you want. That's what play does.
That's really cool. And what makes me wonder how many people haven't had play experiences when they're little, for whatever reason, probably because of time allowed for them to be children and really fully be in the moment expressing the things, whether or not they were hurried along to something else. My son asked me something yesterday, actually. He's like, what even is time? I'm like, oh, man.
Big one.
Well, it's a human construct. Time just actually doesn't really exist, and, we kind of made it up. And the whole idea of children processing time and being on adult timelines for everything, and, you know, you have to do this by this time because I've got commitments and whatever. That's not really how their brains work and how their brains grow and what we can, you know, best practice for how to raise humans. And yeah, I'm like, oh man, you asked me big questions. I don't really know the answer to that, but okay.
But the lovely thing is you can just stay in the question.
Yeah,
that's what play
let's
allows
find
you to
out together.
do. Yeah, when it's, but how exciting is that?
Yeah, it's
because really it's a basis for anything. If you look at the great ideas and inventions of the world, they often start with experimentation and play, don't they?
Get
It's
curious.
tinkering and
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it just makes me wonder how many dysregulated adults or people, you know, who really struggle with their mental health or whatever haven't got to that place that that child that you were just talking about got to, where they really know who they are, away from everyone else's expectations of them or what they think society or their parents or whoever has decided they are to be. You know, if they actually are the truest version of themselves, that's an incredible gift to have. That's amazing.
That's, like I said, it was just unbelievable for me. You just don't realise, you know, from a conversation and asking, am I doing the right thing, really what that other teacher was alluding to. And ultimately I went down the path of studying therapeutic play, but it's funny how it was already inside you. It's already kind of there in your approach. And it's not that difficult, but once you see it, you can't unsee it.
So let's talk about what play is for the children and what it's not for the children or adults in this space. So my understanding of play is that, you know, there has to be free will and there has to be choices made, and but we also have to have enough structure and understanding of, you know, what the parameters are for the world that you've created or whatever else. Can you talk to me about that a little bit?
I'll do my best. It's a huge it's huge. Well, we know that, and I know you know from your own creative pursuits and what you do with children daily, it's about lighting up that brain and firing the neurons. That's the scientific aspect. But play is also, it's what children use to process ideas, understanding, thinking, but perhaps most importantly, it's the vehicle for relationships. It's a basis for relationships with things and with people.
Okay.
So play is a way of understanding. For early childhood, it's a way of understanding what's happening. First of all, from very young, that I'm when I'm an infant, I realise that I'm my own separate person with my own needs and feelings and thoughts and ideas and continuing on. So it's a way of exploring and expressing, connecting and understanding. So that's long before a pencil's ever in your hand or a laptop, those sorts of things. They come later, but it's the basis for easy things like trial and error. What happens if this happens? And it's a way of explaining. So when I think about play, if I was setting up experiences for children, I would think about sometimes it's reading a book and then the wonderings or the question that your son had about time. So how can that be turned into play? How could you explore that? There's whole pieces of literature all around what they call STEM, if people are familiar.
Yeah.
There's whole theories all around exploring those questions and how can they be discovered while children are acting and reacting and taking on roles. If they were talking about space or time or something like that, they might take on the role. This blew my mind. It was so cool. Imagine pretending that you're a star in the sky and there was a person looking up at you. So there was an opportunity for you to be the star and the person. I think there's ways to look at bringing things to life. So bringing the abstract to life, because it's quite a lot to hold in your head. If I used a space example, so we know that there's
space
a rocket. You get trained to be an astronaut, to go in a rocket. There are certain conditions and things like that. But for a child, it's like, cool, it's just the rocket.
Yeah.
And their emphasis on, we take it for granted that the rocket has fuel and thrust to make it move. But for children, the play would be about understanding that how an object actually works, how they think it might work, their understandings, and each time that they interact with a material or resource, there's more thinking, more shaping thinking and learning.
Yeah.
It's connecting. If I would change topic, if we were talking about sustainability, it's something that we talk about recycling and things like that, but to children it's like, well,
What are you
I don't really get that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But play might be children, as we were using in the therapeutic example, it might be children noticing litter on the beach or in a park or a garden, but something switches on and they start to ask those questions. So play is the vehicle in which they'll pick up all the pieces that they've seen around them and then go and try it out for themselves and try and understand what's happening.
Yeah.
So there's a lot when you're a child, you're sort of watching and observing and listening this adult world.
Yes. So when we're talking about play, how much of it is creating environments for the child to make a discovery versus leading them, I guess? You know, we as adults, I'm sure we want them to just get to the thing and, you know, what is obvious to us is not obvious to them and they actually do need to experience it, don't they? Yeah.
It's a great question. There's a lot in the answer. So it's not necessarily about all the resources and toys in the world. I mentioned that it's about relationships. So children do have some children have a really good understanding of play, perhaps if they've witnessed it or observed it or been part of it, so they can lead the way for others. Children are pretty awesome with their imagination as it is, but then somewhere there had to be an influence to get that started.
Yeah.
So if adults can be somewhat active in the process but learn to, read the room. So it's about giving enough to get children started. So in the Reggio Emilia philosophy, they would talk about a provocation.
Yes.
So putting something, perhaps like a beautiful object and just starting a conversation and leading some questions. Open questions are the best because it encourages that conversation. So play is often, when we think about babies, most people would have experienced or observed that children tend to like the box rather than what's inside it.
Yeah, boxes are brilliant. Boxes are so exciting.
And that same box, that same box could potentially be exciting in different ways throughout childhood, but it depends on what the accessories are with it. So for a young child, it might be about just what is this thing? That it's structured and it opens and closes and it's got a flap or a window or something like that. But if you look to older children, I actually saw an example. I don't know if it was a blog that I saw it in, but a child had created their own laptop out of a box.
Yep.
Because they just wanted to. They saw what it was in their environment and they were replicating it in their own way. So there's opportunities to make meaning from something. And play is, yes, there is an amount of structure, there's an amount of freedom. I think it's just a balance of both. It would be like starting to play a game with no rules. So more often than not, that's probably going to not turn out so well.
Yeah.
Unless you've got someone who's had experience with a game before to get you started.
Yeah.
Where play may come into it is children devise their own strategies to change the game to suit them, to suit the context or the people they know, that sort of thing, or if there's a particular focus they want to look at. So what would happen if the snakes became the thing you went up and the ladders were the thing you went down?
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. There's a game that we play with my big kids classes called Ikebaka, and it's a ball game. Basically, you pass the ball from one to the next. And when we start it conceptually, do they know what a circle looks like? Do they understand my turn, your turn? Do they understand what it looks like to keep a game moving?
Yes.
Do they understand what it looks like for everyone to have a turn? Can they be resilient when it lands on them at the end and it's their turn to sit down? All of those things. But through playing this game with children of various ages between sort of 3 and 12, they change the game. And the only thing really to make that game work is us to be cohesive and for us to have a group plan. You know, if we are all on the same page that you have to clap before the ball gets to you and you can pass it to anyone except the person who passed it back to you, that we could stop singing the game out loud at some point, but you have to sing it in your head and keep track of where we're up to. But even if it lands on you at that point, you still have to know, you know, there's so many ways that we can do it. We can play the game, but everyone has to stand on one foot, but not if it's Tuesday. You know, like there's so many different ways that the kids have played the game to make the game better. My personal favourite is the clapping one, because you don't know the ball is coming to you until it's coming and you've got to clap before you get it and don't miss it. And, you know, it's so fun, so fun. And they are so proud of themselves when they make the game hard and rise to that challenge. And I think it's such a beautiful thing to see them building that grit and building that resilience through play that they've all consented to. Like, you know, collaboratively we've worked out what the silly rules are for this turn through. And you've got to keep all these moving parts in your brain the whole time. It's really... really tricky, you know, and I've seen them play it without me, and I come into the space and they'll start the game as I arrive in the classroom and invite me to play, and I'm like, I don't know the rules of this particular version, you know, and it's great. It's
and
so
they
great.
will be loving it, because how much of children's life is about being told what to do, when to do it, for good reasons. But if the play allows the child to feel more comfortable to understand what they're doing and why they're doing it, and then applying those skills. Yeah. So we're talking about the game there, but a lot of that can be applied to life, because if you think about, they go back to their own relationships and things, there's skills that they bring. Yeah. So even learning to take turns, it might sound like a small thing. We know it's not.
Oh, taking turns.
It's that whole internal understanding and feeling that security. Therapeutic play is also like that. My turn, your turn, my turn, your turn. So it's really underestimated how important that is, because it's relationship skills for life.
Absolutely. And I've watched kids navigate that particular game and look at one of their peers who hasn't had a turn, you know, especially when the ball is not moving in a circle, it's moving wherever, and they'll see that someone hasn't had a go and they'll intentionally throw it to them. And so in terms of the empathy and what they're doing in building relationships and showing that connection and including, and it's really beautiful. It's a really, really beautiful thing. And it's hard to be the kid that hasn't had a turn for a while and still be part of it and still hold your own, and, you know,
And then that great...
And that's life as well, isn't it? You've just got to wait sometimes.
This thing called gratification. No, and then you think how much better it is, even with a child that did feel left out or unsure, the greater magic when they pass that, when they play that, pay it forward. I was going to say play it forward. When they pay it forward to someone else, even then you watch their growth, because you can see that they've progressed a level or however, and just applying that. But it's that. And we've been talking quite a bit about regulation, but it's such an important thing for health and well-being, and play allows a lot of that.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much for joining me today, Jo. We are out of time for our first episode of our podcast. If you are interested in learning more about play, you're very welcome to check out the Sounds Like This blog. We have a couple of blogs on play, the importance of play, what that could look like in early learning settings, setting your space up for play. And I look forward to welcoming you to the next episode of the Sounds Like This blog. Thank you so much for joining me today, Jo Harris.
Thank you.